Well, it's officially hockey season for the St. Louis Blues.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen. Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk to you about Army's presser. Doug Armstrong spoke to the media for about 30 minutes today. He said a lot of things that I took note of that I want to discuss. We have Nathan Walker, who was extended. So Walks is staying in St. Louis. And training camp starts tomorrow, which means that we're officially so back. And I am so excited. I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, folks, we have made it to the good times, right? Now that training camp begins tomorrow, and today was media day for all NHL teams. And the Blues, it looked like they had a bunch of fun. But the important stuff is about what was said today by our guy, Doug Armstrong. And I want to start this off by saying this is that Doug Armstrong happens to be, in my opinion, one of the more vocal GMs in hockey. I've been kind of reading up on some other teams as GMs and what they've said, and even another team that I cover. And the thing with Doug Armstrong, he started off as presser, just welcoming the media back and just being very personable. And for somebody that's in media like me, I do take note of that. And I think that's something that I personally really appreciate about Doug and his transparency. So here's the thing. The Blues, I guess, made a different amount of moves in the offseason that some people might agree with. And then there's some people that might disagree with. And I found something that Doug said really interesting. He kind of named all the new players that the Blues ended up getting over the summer and essentially said they didn't have a taste of what the playoffs were like last year here in St. Louis. And I think sometimes we tend to want to stay complacent with maybe having the same players, not really changing up the roster so much because it worked, right? And Doug said, with Bolduc, that was a difficult decision making that trade for Logan Mayu because he said, Bolduc obviously showed how, skilled he was and is. And the Blues luckily have a lot of depth offensively, right? That's something that we can all agree on this podcast is when it comes to forwards. I don't think the Blues are short in that by any means. But one of the I guess you can say lacking areas is the defense. So this was an opportunity for the Blues to get a player within Logan Mayu that could help improve the Blues' defense. And for me personally, I know that he spoke about it prior, right? But I think that's just the most basic way that this whole entire trade happened was the Blues obviously needed to gain some depth defensively, and it just worked out that way. But he did go on to talk about Mayu and about, hey, he actually didn't want to be drafted. Obviously, he was drafted, and he, did the best that he could do in the situation. And he also said, too, that this is a player that it was a purely hockey move, right? And that was basically what he said. However, I do believe at the end of the day, this is a good move for the Blues. I do believe that. I am upset, obviously, that we don't have Zach Bolduc. However, things change. And Doug said, this is going to benefit the Canadians as well as the Blues. So he says he hopes in years to come from now, both teams are able to look back and be satisfied with the trade. And for me, I felt like that was actually a really good sentimental answer because you never want to wish success for other teams, obviously. However, you can really tell the amount of appreciation Doug had for Bolduc while he was here in St. Louis. Another player, and to see, and I feel like not that we got so many controversial players over the summer, but another player was Lucic getting that PTO. And I have a quote. We certainly did our due diligence. I talked to Milan, obviously. I talked to his family and I talked to his sponsor. I talked to the league. He is 22 months sober now. And he went on to really just say that, he has the ability to be a really good player for the Blues, right? He has a big body and he knows that, there is risk, but he says it's worth the risk and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But again, this is a player that he does believe can still play, and if he is on the roster, he does believe that other teams, he said I believe 4 teams specifically, he didn't name which ones, that were a little bit too comfortable with the Blues last season, would be more uncomfortable. So that was a big point that he brought up. Another point was about some of the older players on the team. He talked about Shen, Pareko, Folk, how they all need to step up this season. And you can't get comfortable as a vet. Another talking point, Doug said a lot today. It was a 30-minute press conference, mind you. But another talking point that I really liked was kind of about the battle. He's excited for this training camp to bring out the battle within the players. He talked about that third line and he knows that, Alexi and Joseph, like there's different players that really want some spots. However, at the end of the day, there's only so many roster spots that they can give out. But Doug just kept on reiterating that I believe he said on October 9th, even if you don't make the roster, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be on the roster on November 9th. So he said the importance of training camp, it's significant because again, it's not like, oh, well, you didn't make it and you have no chance of not making it again. It is you need to work hard. That way there is the possibility of you being able to make it. But he did talk about how the team really did, expedite this retool process with Broberg and Holloway yet again. And that was another comment that Doug made last year about how this really sped up the process. And I also want to say, too, with this whole process, um, obviously, we know that Doug's time as GM is going to come to an end soon with Steiner taking over. And Doug said it's really weird knowing that there is an expiration date. However, that doesn't change his goals and the focus and the priorities that he has for this Blues team. And he made that very clear that at the end of the day, he has expectations, right? He has goals and he does want to make sure that they are met. And again, he's not looking down memory lane yet, as he said. It is his final year, right? And I think that for all of us here, it's a little weird to kind of process that he won't be the GM of the St. Louis Blues. Like that's a really weird that's weird, right? So I do believe that Doug Armstrong is heading into this final season. Just, I don't want to say optimistic, but again, I think that he just has a lot of high expectations. And he also says that he doesn't want to do um he and let me go back and just say this. I have a bunch of notes from today, so don't mind me being kind of all over the place. But one of the main points that Doug also is that he doesn't want to do the job of Jim Montgomery. He says, he has his own depth charts and he kind of has a feel for which players he think will succeed. But at the end of the day, that is the job of Monty. And he also kind of made a little bit of a joke because Lucic, I believe, only played like 5 games in a training camp with Monty. And he said that that has really nothing to do with anything. But at the end of the day, he does have a lot of trust within Jim Montgomery and he has a lot of trust within the guys on the team. And overall, I think that the biggest takeaways from his presser was really just the fact that he wants the older guys to step up. He knows that it's going to be a battle of who makes the final roster. However, if you don't make the final roster, it doesn't guarantee that you won't be playing. And he does believe in Logan Mayu. He obviously likes Lucic's game. And he also addressed that there are some players that the Blues either got rid of or didn't bring back. And obviously, for me personally, I wish Ryan Suter was one of them that they brought back, but he wasn't. And I think that the way that Doug was speaking was, how can we improve this team without losing too many vets? And the reality is that if you did have to make, cuts, right, and not bring back players, I'm very understanding as to why you wouldn't want to bring back Ryan Suter. I am understanding about putting Letty on waivers. I agree with that one. But overall speaking, they didn't do anything too crazy this offseason. So I feel really good about what Doug had to say. And we also had some other news take place today, but I want to tell you about my friends over at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money takes place. It's an all in one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you, and you can link all of your accounts in minutes. See clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. For me personally, I love using Monarch because it makes it an all one, easy to use place. And I feel like personally, I've been saving a little bit more money than I thought I would be. So, this is what you can do. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. We had some big news happen today for the one Australian player in the NHL. And if you don't know who that is our friend Nathan Walker. Walker has an extension again. And it's really funny, actually, for me personally, because when I was doing the intro to Locked On Blues, I had two different people record. One of them was Nathan Walker, and one of them was Captain Braden Shen. I went with the player that I knew for a fact would be with this team for years to come. And I am so pleased to announce that Nathan Walker will also be with this team for years to come, as there was an extension made for Nathan Walker. And it was a 2-year contract extension. And I'm going to read to you the press release because I am really, really happy about this move. Obviously, this was the right decision on the Blues. Walker plays such a hard game overall. So I'm going to pull that up because you deserve to hear exactly what the Blues themselves had to say in their own literature about the Aussie Nathan Walker. The Blues signed forward Nathan Walker to a 2-year contract extension. St. Louis Blues President of Hockey Operations and GM Doug Armstrong announced today that the Blues have signed forward Nathan Walker to a 2-year contract extension worth 1.775 milli AAV, which comes out to 887 AAV. That's again minors. Okay. Walker, 31, dressed in 73 regular season games with the Blues last season, setting a career high with 16 points, 8 goals, 8 assists, while leading the team with 63 penalty minutes and 281 hits. He also shared the team lead with 3 goals in the Blues' first round playoff series against the Winnipeg Jets. Again, it's still too soon to talk about that series. Um, this upcoming season Walker's 7th season with the Blues after the team signed him as a free agent on July 1st, 2019. Overall, the native Australian international has appeared in 229 career NHL regular season games, totaling 56 points with 28 goals, 28 assists, and 122 penalty minutes. Walker also captured the 2018 Stanley Cup as a member with the Washington Capitals. So that is the press release on Nathan Walker. Obviously, he is so deserving of this contract extension. And, not for nothing, but he really does step up when needed. And I know that some of you might say, oh, well, the penalty minutes are a lot. Yes, but again, the hits, what he's able to produce. I mean, there is nobody better than Nathan Walker to be on your hockey team. So again, when you're talking about a player that you really can depend on, it is Nathan Walker. And Lou Korak, who covers the Blues, has this quote from Walker. Obviously, St. Louis is where we want to be. My family and I love it. The culture here is where we want to be, and obviously, hopefully, we can build off of what we did last year. So, this is a guy that, and I've said this time and time and time again, he is a St. Louis Blue for life. I mean, the way that Nathan Walker just captivates this fandom in this city, it's something really special, but he's also a player that really does leave it all on the ice. When I've spoke, because I have talked to Nathan Walker a couple times, and he's really close to the Lexi, by the way, so I'm sure he's happy about that one. But he is so driven and he wants this team to succeed. And I don't think he's the type of player that's ever going to be satisfied unless the team hoists another cup again. And you know, it's not like funny, but for me at least, it's one of those things where I really hope that the Blues start off the season strong, right? But I know if they have players with the same mindset that Nathan Walker has, this team is going to be going to great places. The way that he is in the locker room, I've seen it. I have seen it with my own eyes. And I believe I was actually at one of the games where he scored a goal. Which again, 8 goals, so not a many. I think I was there, and I remember somebody said to me, they came up to me, "Hey, who's that guy with the accent?" And I said, "That's Nathan Walker. He is an explosive player that leaves it all on the ice." And that's how I describe him. And I think that with this extension coming at this time, it makes me kind of wonder, well, when's a Cam Fowler extension going to happen? And I know that might be a weird way for me to think, because obviously I am so happy about, Nathan Walker, but at the same time, I also want to put that out there. Cam Fowler. Oh, also, what about Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg? So I think that there are those kind of thoughts that do come to my mind about when they're going to get their extension. But overall, I'm glad that the Blues took care of business for Nathan Walker. And again, he is so, so, so deserving of this extension. I'm going to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet, okay? I'm a big same game parlay girl, okay? I usually take Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown and then Eagles money line. That's always made me some money. I put $5 down. I usually get $5 in return back. So, yes, that is a positive. We bet big here. But overall, FanDuel has so many options. So, I do encourage you to check out the FanDuel app and just browse, because I am telling you, you can win money the way that I do. And, I'm just saying $5 goes a long way sometimes. So, what are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting fanduel.com to get started. That's fanduel.com to place your first $5 bet. When the blues come marching in. It's training camp tomorrow. Hi. The Blues will begin their training camp tomorrow. And this is a really, really, really cool camp for multiple reasons. One, the amount of talent. I mean, there are so many talented players that are going to be at this camp. And I think after media day today, I think there was 58 players that they had. Um, obviously, there's going to be all of these big questions of who comes out of camp and who makes the team out of camp. And I think that for me personally, I'm interested in a couple of things. So let's start with that. One, I am really interested to see what lines they run. I kind of have a feeling of what the first couple lines will be, right? Kind of adjacent to what we saw last season. But that third line specifically, that's where I'm curious. I really want to know who they have and where because I feel like that line has the most opportunity for some fresh faces to fit in. Defensively, my biggest question is who makes the roster? And Doug brought up a point today. I don't think I mentioned this when it came to defense. And he said, guys like Kessler are going to still have to fight. I don't think he's going to make it. I don't. I think when it comes to players defensively, I think that Logan Mayu, if he has a good camp, might make the roster of how highly Doug spoke about him. So that's another question that I have. I'm also really curious to see how Dvorsky, Juracek, and Snuggie they do. I have the utmost confidence in Jimmy Snuggerud. I think that this guy is a future star, and I've said that time and time again. But I just want to see how he performs at camp this season. I think that camp really gives you an insight for numerous reasons as to what we can expect. If I see the tape from camp and I see just loads of talent, I'm going to feel really good about the guys that we have in Springfield because I know that they can get called up and they could really impact this team in a positive way. However, I don't want to see players digress. And players like a Matthew Joseph, for instance, I do worry about how he's going to be. I think last season, I mean, he did fine, but to me, he blends in a little bit. So I don't really like that necessarily. I don't like the whole feeling like a player is blending in. I want them to stand out. However, at the end of the day, camp is an opportunity to showcase all that you've been working on in the off season. I also hope too that the players that were on the team last season that were in the playoffs, which was majority of the guys, I hope that they are able to bring some fight to camp. This is a Blues team, and I've said this time and time again, that has the potential to be a cup contending team in a few years from now. They do. They have so much talent. And I think when you have a team of so much talent, but maybe you just have to kind of move some pieces and adjust, the roof, it's endless, right? There's endless possibilities. And I think that's what Doug Armstrong was really alluding to today was about the internal battles that the players will have with each other. And that's what I am most excited about. I want to see these guys fight, fight, fight for their spots on the team. And Doug also said, none of these guys can get too comfortable. And I agree with him. Comfortability means that you're not trying hard enough. And that's not even with hockey. That's with anything in life. When you're comfortable, you're complacent. You should never be complacent unless you're hoisting that Stanley Cup. You see, the Panthers, they went back to back because they were not comfortable even when they did win. So for the Blues, it is crucial and vital and important. I can't, listen, there's so many adjectives, right? But what I'm trying to stress to you is that the tone should be set from day one of camp. I want to see Kyrou, Lights Out, Holloway, Broberg, you name it. I want to see these guys fight and battle. And hopefully on opening night when we're in Minnesota, the guys are able to pull off a win because I want to start off the season in the win column. That's what I'm hoping at least. But either way, this was such a fun episode. I love being able to digest all that goes on with the Blues now that we're really back again with pressers and breaking things down. I listened to the full 30 minutes, so you didn't have to. So, again, let me know your thoughts down below on what Doug Armstrong had to say. and on your goals and your expectations for this year's training camp. Is anybody going to make the team that you think would be a little bit surprising, or do you kind of think that it's going to be as we expect? Let me know down below. Again, like always, and we say this after every single episode, let's go Blues.